I decided to welcome back to the show Denis MacShane, who was the UK Minister of State for Europe under former Labour Party Prime Minister Tony Blair. Now, I wanted to find out from him what the feeling is in the UK following the recent results, which saw the Labour Party win by a landslide. I also want to understand how this can impact Albania in terms of migration, in terms of the Rwanda deal, in terms of ongoing policy within Albania and the wider Western Balkan region. Denis, congratulations. You must be very happy. I can imagine the mood in the Labour Party headquarters is quite jubilant at the moment. But are the government feeling a little bit like rabbits in the headlights? You know, they've been 14 years out of power. Now they're back. They are confronted with a bit of a mess, let's be honest. You know, how are things in London at the moment?
It's remarkably calm. The point about Sir Keir Starmer is he is very measured, very middle of the road, very prudent. He's a lawyer, a distinguished lawyer, but he's not a man given to exciting statements or rhetoric or flamboyant speeches. So the government's just getting on with business, taking necessary early decisions, sending out a lot of very positive signals, business-friendly signals. And we've got the European political community, which will include Albania, of course, coming to Blenheim Palace next week. That was set up by President Macron a couple of years ago, and now Sir Keir Starmer is hosting it. And that will be a chance for him to meet Edi Rama and EU leaders, but also other European countries, linked countries like Turkey, Azerbaijan, that are in the broader region, but not in Europe. So and he's going off to America, I think, straight away this week to meet with President Biden for the NATO assembly. So really, he's thrown in at the deep end.
Now, the Conservative Party, I think it's fair to say, will leave behind a pretty toxic legacy when it comes to migration. I mean, the Rwanda deal, threatening to round up asylum seekers with vans and sort of deport them in the middle of the night. How are the Labour Party going to differ in their approach to immigration to the country? Can we expect a softer approach? Are they going to backpedal on a lot of the Tory policies? Are they going to be a nicer government? Is the UK going to be a more welcoming place for people from other countries?
The top headline is that they've ditched the ridiculous Rwanda policy, this rather crazy idea of Rishi Sunak that everybody who came to Britain without proper papers, undocumented, illegally, including many Albanians just coming for work reasons, could be arrested, detained, shipped out to Rwanda and left there to fend for themselves. It was horribly expensive. It wouldn't find many people. Other countries that had tried it had given up. And Rishi Sunak seemed to think it was a miracle cure that would persuade British voters who, like everywhere else in Europe, it's not just Britain, everywhere in Europe. Look at the French election last week. That was all about immigration, migration. It still is today. I listen to the French radio as the Rassemblement National, the right-wing Marine Le Pen party, goes on and on about immigration. It's the headline story in politics, whether the government's on the left, the centre-left, the right, the far right. And I'm afraid in Britain, all those immigration fears and worries are still out there in the population. But I hope this time at least the government will seek to cooperate with near neighbours in the rest of Europe instead of pretending they could find wacky solutions like deporting everybody to Rwanda.
So we're not going to see a community of Albanians and coffee shops in Rwanda anytime soon, then? No burek shops or anything like that?
No, I'm sure any Rwanda will benefit in terms of its coffee if there are more Albanians were there, because, I mean, all over England, there are funny little corners of lost villages and towns. You go there and suddenly you smell good coffee, knock on the door, and it's 100 to 1. It's an Albanian immigrant who set up a little coffee shop. But no, Rwanda can be left to its own devices. I don't think there'll be many people flying out there from Britain.
Now, the previous Labour Party government, headed by Tony Blair, we know very well in Albania that he and they had a close relationship with our current Prime Minister. They're both from the same political family. What about Keir Starmer? You know, can we expect to see a similarly close relationship between the Albanian Prime Minister and him, between the two parties? Are things going to get better? Because under the Conservative government, we know that relations were not always particularly smooth.
I think yes. I think that Edi Rama is popular in Britain. I think he'll get on well with Sir Keir Starmer. He cooperated fully with the last government on the issue of any Albanians who are crossing the channel without papers illegally. And I think Keir Starmer will welcome that. There's also the fact that Eddie's got one very good friend in London. That's my friend Alistair Campbell, who was Tony Blair's press officer, but Alistair as being at the heart of the Labour campaign, commenting on it, writing on it, speaking on it. So I would hope that those contacts would certainly open the door to a good relationship between Edi Rama and Sir Keir Starmer.
Now, the UK, apart from colonising half the world at some point, has always had quite a strong presence in Kosovo, in the Western Balkans. It has a lot of policies geared towards the region. The Quint, of which the UK is a member, are again very active in the region as well. Can we expect to see a similar focus from the Labour Party government, or are they going to be focusing their attention elsewhere?
I certainly hope so. Top British officials who are responsible for the West Balkans particularly Kosovo, have continued to be operational down there. I was at a meeting with Miroslav Lajcek, that's the EU official in charge of the region this morning, and he was praising the work of British officials. And certainly Britain's going to be looking for foreign policy areas to work on in a European context. It's not part of the EU, so it's not going to be on the Council of Ministers. It won't be involved in European foreign policy decisions, but we still live in the common region, and anything that happens in the West Balkans always impacts one way or another on Britain. So I hope that Britain will take its responsibilities seriously. I know that my friend David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, he's been in Pristina. He's met with Kosovan governments and is minister in charge of most European questions, a man called Steve Doughty. He also has been in Bosnia and I think in Kosovo. So they've been preparing themselves a bit over the last year, 18 months. And I certainly will be writing and encouraging them to take a direct interest in the region.
Now, I have to ask, Keir Starmer has said that there's no chance of the UK rejoining the EU in his lifetime. But do you think there is a way that the UK might rejoin the EU? Who's going to get there first, Albania or the UK? What do you think?
Right now, if Albania continues on good reforms, I mean, that's a big problem. All of the West Balkan countries, Kosovo, Albania, Bosnia, and North Macedonia, even Serbia, say they want to join the EU, but are they prepared to reform their own internal way of operating? And are they prepared also to put the horrors of the past, the wars of the Milosevic era, the last century, behind them, and like France and Germany after 1945, 1950, effect a real reconciliation, learn to live with each other, not always demanding that the other side is on its knees, apologizing for wrongs done in the past. Now, it's entirely up to leadership in the community. I don't think Albania is particularly a problem on this, but some of the other nations need to wake up. I think that but Britain itself, right now, we were scarred, burnt. The scars haven't healed. The burns haven't skinned over from the Brexit referendum and then the very ugly anti-European policy shaped by Boris Johnson and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. That's going to have to die down a bit and find in particular partners. We're looking at how you manage people movement. If you say free migration, freedom of movement in Britain, I would support it, but in most places, people just recoil in horror, thinking that means 1 million Albanians, 2 million Poles, 3 million Bulgarians suddenly arriving in the UK. And we want them, we need them, I mean, like every northern or advanced European economy and society, Britain needs people to come in to be doctors, nurses, but also drivers and make great coffee. Rishi Sunak's answer was to ban all the Europeans, bring in people from India, Pakistan, Nigeria. I've absolutely no problems with any of those countries, but it's always struck me to be more sensible to bring in fellow Europeans who share, to some extent, a little bit more the cultures that we have all grown up with. So that's, again, a question of dialogue, setting good examples, but it's not going to happen overnight. We're not rejoining the EU. I've got the rejoin T-shirt. I can put it on for you, Alice, if you want to see it. But I don't think, and I want to wear it out in the park, going for a walk, going for a run with grandchildren. People stop and say to me, "What? Really? Oh, do you think it could actually happen?" And I have to very gently say, I'm just enjoying the T-shirt, but the future will have to look after itself.
I think if I want to be an EU citizen, again, I need to count on my Albanian passport application rather than the UK one then. Thank you very much, Denis.